right, welcome back. It's now time for data points. When you're looking at the reports of the control of budget and the national government budget implementation, it's a very wide document, but it takes some time to reflect on the expenditure, especially on the expenditure within the consolidated fund services, which is the source of the following resources: the public debt, the salaries and allowances, as well as the pensions and gratuities. They are contained in the consolidated fund services, and the total budget for that is 2.08 trillion shillings, of course, out of the nearly 4.5 trillion shilling of a budget. But now the total expenditure so far at half year, that is by December last year, was 668 billion shillings. If you had to compare that against the budget, then you see it's a bit of disparity because it looks like it's just about a third. For some constitutional offices, which of course draw their resources and salaries from the consolidated fund, we want to take a look because the total budget for them was 4.7 billion shillings. That should run those offices for 12 months, meaning at half year that would be 50%, which is about 2.35 billion shillings. But the actual expenditure is 1.6 billion shillings, reflecting a 34% budget absorption. And there's a question there, because then it means that out of the budget, the resources that are yet to be used is 3.1 billion shillings, which is 66%. Now, this is not proportionate to what should be happening, because, like I said, half of the resources, if that budget is as per need, should have been spent by now. But you see that disparity. Let's explain it by looking at specific offices. And first up is Office of the President and the Deputy President. The allocation based on the budget is 42.4 million shillings. But by December last year, which is 6 months of the financial year, what was absorbed is 16.6 million shillings, which is just about 39%. If you go deeper to focus on the Office of the President specifically, it has one occupant and it spent 9.08 million shillings in salaries. That's an average of 1.5 million shillings every month. But the rate allowed by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission in a Gazette notice that was issued last year is supposed to be 1.44 million shillings. Of course, that rate is after the President and the Deputy President rejected salary increments. For the Deputy President, the expenditure by December last year, 6 months, was 7.54 million shillings. That's an average of 1.25 million shillings. And of course, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission rate is 1.22 million shillings. So this is important because it means that the two offices, Office of the Deputy President and Office of the President, have been paid salaries at 16.62 million shillings in total. The budget is 42.4 million shillings. That indicates an over-budgeting of those resources, and there are some few questions that need to be answered. For other offices, for instance, the Office of the Control of Budget, she particularly complained sometime last year that her office was receiving more allocation than what it needs. She said in her Office of the Control of Budget, she is the only state officer but gets allocations more than she needs. The budget is 18.36 million shillings. The expenditure by half year was 4.81 million shillings. That means a 26.2% as absorption. The salaries and remuneration rate, of course, the control of budget is should be paid about 759,000 shillings every month. In 6 months, that should come to 4.75%, which is close to what has been spent. There's an over-budgeting, of course, that you can see clearly. For the Office of the Auditor General, the budget plan is 21.56 million shillings. The expenditure is 5.79 million shillings, an absorption of 27%, and that means by now, according to the SRC rate, 5.7 million shillings is the money that should have been spent so far. It is close to what has been spent. Again, over-budgeting for that office. Attorney General's office, the budget allocation is 19.3 million shillings. The actual expenditure is 5.79 million shillings. Of course, there is only one Attorney General. And the rate by SRC allowed is 5.74 million shillings. You realize that it's very close to what the allocation for the Auditor General should be. It's actually the same because it's about 957,000 shillings a month. Therefore, there is an absorption of 30%, again, over budgeting, or what you may call inflated budget. Now, to other offices. The NCAC, the National Commission on National Cohesion and Integration Commission, the budget is 128.9 million shillings. The half-year expenditure is just about 29.4 million shillings, which is 22.8%. IBC, and this can be explained because the budget is 105 million shillings. The expenditure is just about 220,000. there are no commissioners at the moment, so that may be explained in that sense. The National Land Commission, the budget allocation is 88.7 million shillings. The half-year expenditure is just about 26%. The Judicial Service Commission, the budget for that office is 3.6 billion shillings. The absorption is 33%. There's a problem there because you cannot budget for more than you can absorb. By this time, by December 2023, the expenditure should have been about 1.8 billion shillings, which would have been 50% of the half-year expenditure. To something else, the Commission on Revenue Allocation, the budget is 79.4 million shillings. The percentage absorption is 41%. The Salaries and Remuneration Commission that sets this particular salary limits, allocation is 96.6 million shillings. The half-year expenditure is 41.8 million shillings, which is 43% absorption. The National Police Service Commission, you can see it. The allocation is 88.7 million shillings, but the absorption is just about 29%. So what does the Controller of Budget say? She says that the Controller, she recommends that the National Treasury should address the factors that affect, not myself, but salaries, allowances, and miscellaneous services, budget performance, or rationalize these budgets or the budgetary allocations during the remaining period of financial year 2023-2024. So that means that there's a possibility to rationalize would mean coming up with a supplementary budget to reduce the budgetary allocations because, in any case, they're not being absorbed because they are not within what is expected to be real spend. Now, for something else, remember last year, the country was promised by the leadership in the National Executive there would be reduction of travel, both domestic and foreign. Let's take a look at what the Control of Budget is finding. She finds that the domestic travel has actually gone up. Last year, a similar time, it was 5.4 billion shillings. It has gone up to 7.6 billion shillings in absolute terms. The foreign travel has gone up to 3.7 billion shillings from 2.6 billion shillings. In total, the national government has spent 11.4 billion shillings in travel, a rise of 40% from 8.1 billion shillings similar period the previous year. Something else that you need to note is that the State House has spent 415 million shillings on domestic travel, that is within the country. It has spent 40.8 million shillings for foreign travel. The Executive Office of the President has spent 21 million shillings to move around the country and 12 million shillings outside the country. The Office of the Deputy President has spent 185 million shillings to move around the country and 111 million shillings for foreign travel. The Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, again, 29 million shillings domestically and 6 million shillings foreign. And of course, this does not include the expenditure for the Foreign Affairs Ministry, which the Prime Cabinet Secretary now heads. Parliament has spent 3.09 billion shillings on domestic travel and 1.4 billion shillings for foreign travel. Additionally, something that you need to note is that for the previous financial year, the national government, the whole year, spent 20.3 billion shillings. That means already the national government has exceeded the half year because this would be 10.15 billion shillings. Already it has spent more than 11 billion shillings. The county governments in the previous year spent 17.5 billion shillings to give a total of 37.8 billion shillings. And this was the figure that the government was hoping to reduce. By all indications, there's a chance that that may go up if the trend continues as what has been seen from the half-year expenditure as reported by the Controller of Budget. And that is Data Point this week.